Okay, I think everything is online now. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting. The regular meeting of the Design Review Committee for the City of San Clemente, Wednesday, August 25th, 2021's meeting. I believe everyone has been to a design review meeting here at the city previously. Is that correct? Or Mark, would you like us to read the kind of preamble to what we do at Design Review Committee?
You know, I would recommend just reading the preamble since we do have a new applicant. Some of them are fairly new to development in the city.
Okay. The preamble is: the purpose of the subcommittee is to provide direction, insight, concerns, and options to the applicant on how the project can best comply with the city's design guidelines and/or city policies. The subcommittee is not a reviewing body or approving body. They make recommendations to the Planning Commission and Zoning Administrator regarding a project's compliance with city design guidelines. Each of the subcommittee members will provide input and suggest recommendations to the applicant based on written city design guidelines and/or policies. The subcommittee will not design the project for the applicant, nor will they incorporate any changes accordingly the applicant can then assess the input and incorporate any changes accordingly with the understanding that the subcommittee is simply a recommending body. Decisions to approve, deny, or modify a project are made by the Planning Commission, City Council, and/or Zoning Administrator with input and recommendations from the subcommittee and city staff. The chair of the subcommittee will lead the discussion. Planning staff will be available to provide technical assistance as necessary. Time is limited. Consequently, the design review subcommittee will focus on site and project design rather than on land use issues, which are the purview of the Planning Commission, City Council, and/or Zoning Administrator. We have item 1 is approval of minutes of the August 11th, 2021 meeting. Do we have any changes or a recommendation to approve?
I move we approve the minutes of the August 11th meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion by McCann, second by Commissioner Camp. I'll call a roll vote. Commissioner McCann?
Aye.
Commissioner Camp?
Aye.
And Commissioner Crandall is also an aye. So the minutes pass unanimously. Item 2, architectural review of the following items. We have one item this evening. Master Project 21-158 Frontera Memory Care and Assisted Living Facility, APN 679-021-05. Stephanie Rojas is our senior planner on this project. And to start out with, Stephanie, could you introduce the project team for the mission members?
Yes, of course. So I'll have to actually introduce the applicant's representative, Mark McGuire, who will be happy to introduce his full applicant team today.
Hi, can you hear me, Stephanie?
Yes, we can hear you, Mark.
Okay, great, thanks. So thank you, Chair Crandall. So let me make the introductions. I'll start in the upper left corner on the screen. It's Bill Crowell, who is kind of the project manager shepherding for South Bay Partners, the applicant. Also from South Bay Partners, I believe he may be on an airplane, so I think he's just listening in, is Joel Sherman. Then Peter Petraglia is the architect from VTBS up in Los Angeles. We then have Linda Sandusky and Andrew Rapp from the civil engineering firm, David Evans and Associates. And then I saw, but maybe lost here, Dan Dell from MJS Landscape. Oh, there he is.
Yes, he is here.
Got it. Actual has a screen and everything, unlike the rest of us. So yeah, Dan is the landscape architect from MJS Landscape Architecture, who, by the way, Bart also worked on the Shore Cliffs project. So
yes,
that's our team. And Stephanie, I'll hand it back to you.
And Mark, would you also introduce yourself? And Mark is a local a local that has processed a lot of ones. So Mark, could you introduce yourself and kind of explain who you are and what you do for this project?
Absolutely, and I want to say welcome to the two new Design Review Subcommittee members and Planning Commissioners. Thank you for serving for our fair city. I've been a resident when I wasn't somewhere else to go to law school or college. I've been a resident of San Clemente since 1970, and have worked on a number of projects in town. And after Stephanie walks through the project, I'll probably just take a minute to kind of talk about the fact that we had done a project on this site once, and now we're coming back for what I think is a new and improved, but I'll let Stephanie do that. But that's me, Mark McGuire, resident in town, and have done process land use projects up and down the state. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Stephanie, it's your mic.
Oh, certainly. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can everybody see my PowerPoint presentation okay? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so good afternoon, Chair Crandall and members of the Design Review Subcommittee. The applicant proposes to subdivide 2.5 acres of a vacant parcel located at the intersection of Calle Frontera and Calle Ola Verde. The site abuts the I-5 freeway, single-family residences, multifamily condominiums referred to as the Fair Harbor neighborhood, and Pacific Coast Church. The outlets are located across the freeway. The site is located in the institutional area of the Marblehead Inland Specific Plan. The site is currently owned by Pacific Coast Church. So as noted in the staff report, in March 2020, so not too long ago, the city approved entitlements for the Artist Memory Care Facility at the same site. So for reference only, I am including a copy of the approved site plan, and I will make several references to the previously approved artist project throughout my presentation today. Now, the current applicant, South Bay Partners, proposes to develop the site with a similar state licensed residential care facility. However, because the operations, services provided, and building configuration are unique to each individual operator, and for that reason, the city is requiring the applicant to obtain new entitlement approvals. And really what I wanted to highlight here today on the site plan is that the new applicant was able to retain many of the design features that were desirable to the city under the prior project. So for example, the main parking lot and the trash enclosure are oriented towards the rear of the property, so it is not visible from the street. The new site plan also includes a small parking lot and visitor drop-off area located at the front of the property. So this new layout is preferred because it facilitates safer and more convenient resident drop-offs and pickups, and internal vehicle circulation is improved as well. The Marblehead Inland Specific Plan does not contain design guidelines, and the citywide design guidelines do not address institutional uses. The site is not located in the architectural overlay, nor is it considered a gateway location. Therefore, the project is not required to use Spanish colonial revival architecture. Overall, there is very little guidance in our policy documents when it comes to design review. However, that being said, our guidelines do emphasize compatibility with the neighborhood. So included here are photos of the existing uses adjacent to the project site. As you can see, both developments incorporate Cape Cod style architectural elements. And so here is a side-by-side comparison of the previously approved project and the current proposal. Overall, staff believes that the current design represents a substantial improvement over the previously approved design. The prior project was a single story, and the new project is a 2-story design. And really that change in adding a story while still complying with the maximum height limit of the zone, it allows for enhanced variation within the building form and shape. It uses articulation techniques that were less viable in a single story design. So for example, it's able to incorporate upper floor balconies and a brick veneer base, as well as, the second floor windows provide added relief to the building while breaking up the roof and the building mass overall. And as you can see here, it also includes design elements such as horizontal siding, brick veneer accents, again, balconies and metal trellises, all really to enhance and provide additional articulation throughout the building design. Let's see. So again, as shown here in this rendering, the project is consistent with the neighboring developments in that it uses Cape Cod style architectural elements. This rendering is taken from the street view. So another change that we wanted to highlight to the floor plan is that now the main building entrance faces the street. Previously, under the prior site plan, the entrance was oriented towards the side facing the church. So this current layout is preferable because it allows the entrance to become a more distinguishing feature from the road. The building entrance also includes a covered porte-cochere, probably butchering the pronunciation there. But overall, that covered entrance gives the main building entrance a more prominent feel. Now, this perspective was very important during the DRC review of the prior project. This rendering is taken from Calle Frontera, which connects Avenida Vista Hermosa and Avenida Pico. So it will be a very heavily traveled street. And early on in the DRC process for the prior project, the subcommittee expressed concerns over it appearing too institutional in its design. However, with this current proposal, staff believes this project was designed as a high quality residential project that would fit in well within any residential neighborhood. The project site also backs up to the freeway, so views from the freeway was also very important during the previous DRC review. Like the previously approved project, the current site plan has the majority of its parking spaces oriented towards the rear. So the parking lot provides a large buffer separating the building and the freeway. So in summary, the project is consistent with the city's design guidelines and general plan policies. However, there is very limited guidance when it comes to institutional uses. So the project should also be reviewed for its overall architectural quality and merit. Staff believes this project represents an improvement over the previously approved design. And for that reason, staff does not recommend specific changes. Today, staff is seeking DRC input to assist the applicant in developing a project of high architectural quality and design. And we are also seeking direction on whether the project's design is ready for Planning Commission consideration. That concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions. And as you know, the entire applicant team is ready and available as well.
Okay, Mr. McGuire, would you like to make a short presentation?
Only to say thank you to Stephanie for her efforts, both on the prior project, the artist project, and now picking up the ball on this one. It's always good to work with Stephanie. Her presentation is very consistent with how we feel and how I feel about this application. If you remember, we worked hard on the artist application, and even though it was one story, it still reached the 25-foot height limit. And because just the nature of that building, there was always some tension in terms of how big the roof was in relation to the single story. Just felt like it had a big hat on top, if you will. And so we were always bucking up against that for that project. So I do think design-wise that this project reads better than the artist project that was approved. And just to bring you up to speed as to how we got to where we are, that project was approved right as COVID was hitting. It was the last, it had to go to the city council after being unanimously approved by the planning commission because it did include a specific plan amendment. And so we were approved in March, and then COVID hit hard, and that applicant, artist, did not move forward. And so Pacific Coast Church, which is the owner of the property, went back out to find interested parties, and I think they were really fortunate to find South Bay Partners because they've put together a really good design team, and I think have come up with a good project. So having said that, we welcome input from the design review subcommittee, and the team's here to answer any and all questions that we can. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. I've got one question before we start talking the project and having the commissioners ask questions of staff and the applicant. But there was a lot of public outreach on the previous project, and the public now has a vested interest in an understanding of what was originally proposed on this site. And it doesn't appear from what the documents I have in front of me that there was outreach to show that it's changed now and there's a new application involved. Can you tell me how and why that occurred?
That's a great question, and we have every intention of reaching out to the community in pretty much the same template, which I do think was an effective template before, which is to reach out both to the nearest community, the townhome community. I like to say to the south. I don't know if it's to the east. In San Clemente, directions are always a little bit funky, but down coast, the townhomes next door, and then the master HOA. So we plan to make presentations to both of them, and then to have a open house hosted by the church. So that's what we did the last time, and that's what we plan to do again. We haven't done that yet because we only recently got our DMT comments back. We like to make sure that there aren't any fatal flaws, that we didn't, miss something. And then also to get the benefit, at least the first time around from you guys, to make sure that we're not, off on a wrong footing. But then we have every expectation or commitment to going out to the community. And if for some reason there are changes that they want to see in response to that, and that requires us to come back to you guys to present those changes, we'll do that. I guess in a sense we're at risk of that occurring, although again I believe that it'll be received well by the neighbors. But that process just hasn't happened yet because we weren't quite through some of the technical review that we like to see before we do that.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Either Commissioner Camp or McCann, would you like to ask any questions of project team or staff? I see you both came up quickly. Go ahead, since you're on the left here, Commissioner McCann.
Just a couple quick questions. So the lot, the lot that will remain vacant adjacent, that's owned by the same landowner, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so the references to cross lot drainage and relocating drainage easements and access easements and stuff, there's no problems with acquiring those.
Yeah, it's my understanding that they plan to develop that as an additional parking lot for their church facility. And that's what they've conveyed to us. And I think that there's no issues between basically the artist project and our project. We plan on have similar driveway approaches and shared access for their parking lot to exit through that area. So I think all the same utilities that are in the ground now that we need to relocate would be relocated in that driveway, and everything fits in there just fine for the storm drain and the other items that are already there, as well as what needs to be put there in the future.
And that makes perfect sense. I'm just asking it from a perspective of crossing T's and dotting I's. And then the other question I had was, there's a pool. Is there any need for a fence around the pool? There's a pool in one of the courtyards.
Yeah,
Courtyard. Go for it, Peter.
Oh. The building at
I couldn't understand anything.
Dan, would you like to go ahead and answer that question? It looks like you had something to say.
Yeah, it will have a pool enclosure. Orange County Health Department requirements 5 feet. It'll go around kind of the north. We're using part of the building on the west-hand side plan, but on the north, east, and south, we'll have it. And there's setbacks from the units and those types of things that we're accommodating right now as well.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner McCann. Commissioner Camp.
A couple questions. Stephanie, you put some information in here about the previous project that was approved. How does this project compare in terms of density? Number of units?
Yeah, so there are, I would say that it's a little bit unique because it's not really a pure residential type of use. So typically our density requirements apply to residential uses, and this is an institutional use, which is quasi, residential / commercial / institutional. So the residential density ratios don't quite carry over the same way. But in terms of the overall unit count, it is a little bit higher than what was previously approved. So what was previously approved was 72 beds within the memory care facility. And this one, let's see, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me.
I think it's 88 total.
Yeah, so it's a little bit more. But it's a combination of memory care plus assisted living. And the short answer to your question is that overall, it still does meet the development standards of the zone, as well as one of the things that we are looking at is parking, as well as the number of vehicle trips that are generated to the site. So there was a traffic engineer that prepared a study that we are reviewing as part of our overall environmental analysis and staff's review of the application, just to ensure that it is consistent with the intended development density of that area.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the reason I ask that is because there's a lot of emphasis here on the fact that there was a previously approved project, but I'm not sure that's relevant unless, there's 5 different entitlement requirements here, right? There's the specific plan amendment, tentative parcel map, site plan permit, architectural permit, and CUP. None of those are carrying over. Is that correct?
No, so there are 2 that are carrying over. So the specific plan amendment and the tentative parcel map, those are carrying over. Those are still valid. So the application that we have today is a architectural permit, conditional use permit, and a site plan permit.
Okay. So that parcel is set in terms of the configuration based on the previous tentative map approval.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And then the specific plan amendment was to allow for this institutional use, or what specific?
Yeah, so I would say that it is a very unusual specific plan. It basically only said that churches and daycares were allowed in these institutional uses, which is very unusual. Typically when we have zones, it's not that specific. It's a little bit broader. So the intent of the specific plan amendment that was previously approved was to kind of add some clarifying language to the document to explain that it does allow for memory care facilities and other institutional uses through a CUP process. So it was really just to add more clarifying language to the specific plan.
Okay. So we're really looking at the architectural character, the site planning, those kinds of issues today.
Right.
Okay. Is there a reason why the primary driveway is on the adjacent parcel and not part of this?
Right. I will defer to the applicant team, whoever would like to take that question. I know that was a question that came up before. Sorry, go on, Mark.
Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie, and hi, Commissioner Camp. So this is the exact same configuration in terms of access that was done for the prior approval. And the thought process behind it was that the church only wanted to give away, they're not giving away, they're selling, only wanted to sell a certain amount of that parcel that's been divided or is going to be divided pursuant to the tentative parcel map. And they anticipated that at some point in the future, they'll have additional parking that will take access off of that shared drive. And so it was a combination of the desire to limit the number of driveway cuts on Frontera. And so if there was an opportunity for a shared drive in anticipation of what might come next, to do that, but also, and maybe even to a greater extent, a desire on the part of the church to keep as much of the property as they could, but also accommodate a use like this. So that's how that parcel was configured. And in order to allow both the prior approved project and this approved project to work, the circulation access had to be on the adjacent parcel via a shared easement.
So it's not a shared driveway though. Otherwise it would be split at the parcel line, right? It's all on the adjacent parcel.
That's right. I meant shared in the sense that it'll be shared. Both parties will share access from that same drive, but you're right. It's the access is on the adjacent property.
Okay, and Stephanie, you say that Pacific Coast Church wants to utilize the rest of that property for parking lot for their project or for their church. Is there a layout that's been submitted as to how that parking lot's going to work?
No, so the property owner has not submitted an application to the city. I would defer to Mark in terms of kind of what their timeline is, but it is intended for future expansion.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak completely out of turn for the church, but I really don't know what their timing is. You know, they've had different visions in the past in terms of what they might do, and so they don't have a formal plan in the wings or ready to go or anything like that. But every time in the two applications that I've been involved with on this part of the site, their anticipation has always been that no matter what they do on the rest of the property, this component would be access to parking. So our understanding has been in the past that if they were to do any other site planning, the buildings and what have you would not be, right up against this property. It would be more of a parking field. But again, no formal applications have been made.
Mm-hmm. That's
And I think one other point on that is the easement was mainly for the storm drain easement that could not be built on anyway. So the obvious solution was flat work for driveway access, since neither site could build over that storm drain.
But that storm drain's being abandoned. That easement's being abandoned.
It's being relocated.
Relocated, yes.
Okay.
Right
So
now, it
it's not
kind of goes
necessarily-
right across the site.
So is that valid if it's not? So the new location for the easement is going to be on the adjacent property.
The storm drain will come down partway down the shared access drive again, and I use shared just meaning that both parties eventually will use it. But the storm drain will be underneath that access drive, and then eventually it does come on to this site in the rear where the parking is.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to belabor this point, but I'm assuming that property owner is aware that the driveway that provides access for your project is on their property. Yes?
Yes, they are the owner of this property as well at this point. So they're the ones that are selling this parcel once it's created as a separate parcel. So they've been well aware of that, both in connection with the prior approval and in connection with this entitlement effort.
Okay. I have a question. I have quite a few comments, but I also have a question for the applicant. We have in front of us here, relevant design guidelines. This table that Stephanie, that you provided, which I don't know if this is for our purposes with this project or it was the previous one, but item number 1 says development proposals should demonstrate an effort to retain significant existing natural features, existing topo, drainage courses, vegetation, and public views should be considered. Can you explain to us how this was incorporated in your design for this project?
Sure, sure. Yeah. And I would say that, with the design guidelines, they are, broad overarching, goals and, policies that the city supports. And the reason that's included there is because there were a couple of things that were considered in terms of maintaining views. So, considering views from the freeway was one of them, ensuring that that there was a specific, aesthetic maintained from the freeway. Maintaining views from the abutting single family residences across Calle Frontera was also a very critical piece of the overall project. And that's why it was very important to, to this proposal, as well as the prior proposal, to maintain compliance with the 25-foot height limitation so that those views can be maintained as well. So I think that the intent of that design guideline was really intended to preserving certain features that are key to maintaining quality of life for all of the neighboring property owners in the vicinity, and making sure that this proposal was designed in such a way that it wouldn't impede those views that could affect quality of life.
Okay, I appreciate your response, but I was kind of hoping to hear from the applicant.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Sure. Yeah, I can say we studied several different site plan configurations, and we had a version where the entire project was on the back half of the site. The parking lot was on Calle Frontera, and the majority of the building was against the freeway. We had it shifted closer to the condominiums at one point in time. So we did several different layouts, and we arrived at the one that we presented to you today because we feel that by pulling the project closer to Calle Frontera and maintaining the parking lot where it is, it does the most justice to our neighbors directly next door in the townhomes, and it preserves the majority of their views looking across the freeway towards the coast. And we felt like that was really important. As Stephanie said, maintaining a 25-foot height limit, it was really key to our entire design as well, so that the neighbors behind us that are, even though they're up on a hill and be looking clear over us, we wanted to adhere to that. And we aren't doing this. The lot is relatively flat. We're going to have some grading operations there, obviously, because when you have seniors, these people don't want to go up and down. A lot of grade changes, which is nice about this site because it's already relatively flat. So our grading will be minimal. We're going to have to cut a little bit on the front and raise the back, but the goal here is to overall balance the site so that we're not having any kind of major import or export activities going on. So the site will be very balanced and the cut and fill will be very minor.
Okay, so there is a 20-foot grade change from the front to the back, which is, even though it appears flat, that's fairly significant. And I don't see where that's been, taken into consideration with the design. It appears that what you did is basically balance the grading,
right,
by cutting the high side and filling the low side to give yourself a flat piece of property. Is that a fair statement?
Hey, Bill.
Yes.
Hey, Bill, can I comment on?
Sure.
Again, some of these things, have been asked and answered with the last project, because we're essentially using the same footprint as the last project. In terms of 20 feet, I don't think, Commissioner Camp, that it's 20 feet on the pad. There's a slope in the very back that drops another 10 feet. So it's roughly a 10-foot grade change from the front to the back. And we start lower than the sidewalk elevation, street elevation on the front by cutting just a very small amount in the front that takes you a little bit to a low profile in the front, and then and then we have a parking lot in the back that limits how much fill and how much the building has to be on top of a pad in the back. But yeah, you're right that we A, balance the site, and B, have a flat site because of the nature of the use, which is these senior assisted living and memory care uses, which requires a flat site. So
Okay.
a terracing wouldn't work, and I don't think it's really, my own experience on those sorts of landform and topography, respecting the topography, I've not seen it come up on a pad site like this. It comes up obviously in the projects on the hills and the canyons, but it is true that there's roughly 10 feet of fall on the pad.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand here. You're referring to the previous footprint, but that project is not what's before us, right? So we're looking at this as if it's a brand new project, because it is, right?
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. My only point in that was that, we thought about a lot of these issues in terms of how we configured the site and what worked both with the community and in both at the Planning Commission and the City Council in the past, was a very similar concept, which was to come down off of the street, have a relatively small amount of cut in the front portion of the site and a relatively small amount of fill on the rear portion of the building pad, and then have that parking in the rear, which does allow for a view cone for the condos next door that, if you put the building back there, they would lose that. So I'm just sharing with you that those were a lot of the things that went into the thought process, both in connection with the past application and with this application.
okay, thank you. Somebody else I've got a few others, but somebody else can.
I think this might be an appropriate time, Commissioner Camp, to ask staff and the applicant about the existing grade versus regrading and where the height limit is determined from, where the 25-foot comes from. Is it finished grade? Is it existing grade? Is it, where is the height determined from, Stephanie?
Sorry about that. It's typically measured from the existing grade.
Is that how this building has been designed? And I'm asking the applicant's team.
Yeah, so this is Mark. Stephanie, with all due respect, so the city, having been through this before, not only on this site, but other sites, the city has areas that the measurement is taken from the existing grade, and there are areas where it's taken from the finished grade, and this is part of the town where it's taken from the finished grade. So, you can confirm that in the code, but this is an area where the 25 feet is taken from finished grade.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Mark.
Okay, Commissioner Camp, why don't you go ahead with any other questions you might have? And that was, Commissioner Camp did raise that question, so it was a
So
good.
just to clarify, you're regrading the site to a certain height, and then you're taking your 25 feet from that new grade.
Yeah, it's roughly the midpoint. Right now, I think the lowest point is around 197, 198. The highest point is around, and that's, down towards the freeway. And the highest point is along Calle Frontera, and it's somewhere around 207 or 208. And the middle point is something like 201, roughly. I'm not looking at a map, I'm just going from memory. So we're trying to balance on the midpoint, more or less.
Okay.
You
All right,
could
let me,
reference, the building elevations can be referenced on sheet A 3.1, and we're noting the finished grade as 200.33 feet. And then
So yeah,
there's
we're
the
actually, Peter, we actually bringing it down just a little bit from where it stands today.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit lower actually than what it is right now. So we're not raising it up. We're kind of lowering overall. The center point will be slightly lower than what it is now. By about
And
a
then-
foot.
Yeah, and then just for reference, I am sharing my screen. This is sheet A30 within your architectural plans.
Right.
And just to kind of reiterate what Mark said too, is that this site was graded in the past, and there are improvements on it. So it's not a raw landform. It is a graded site in a master plan community. It's just been sitting here for a while.
Okay.
It's not a natural landform. It's a graded site.
All right. And, we're here to assist and make suggestions. And I want to try to maintain that spirit. This is a bluff top site in San Clemente. I went over there and kind of walked the site, looked at it from the adjacent property as well as on the property itself. There's some significant, I think, environmental benefits on this site in terms of view, even from the property itself. And to me, the project that's proposed is very inward focused. I understand that by putting the parking on the freeway side, you were preserving views from the neighbors, and that certainly is important. But when I look at this design, it appears that this could have gone anywhere on a site of this configuration. It doesn't open itself up to the sort of the beauty of San Clemente in any way. And I understand there's things that you're dealing with in terms of accessibility, but I don't think it has to be completely flat in order to accomplish that. That can be accomplished in garden spaces and landscaping in areas where the mass of the project is broken both vertically and horizontally. And I don't really see that with this project. Just purely from, let's say, an environmental standpoint, I'm wondering, how did you guys deal with issues like, I think the views within the property, I think there's natural breezes up on the bluff top. There's, opportunities potentially for natural light. How do you deal with stormwater, water quality management, issues like that, which I don't see incorporated into this project. So can you kind of tell me how that was considered? And again, I know it needs to be a secure environment. People aren't allowed to leave the property once they're in there, but you also want to encourage visitors to be able to come and enjoy the time that they spend there with their loved ones. Because typically you've got people that have been put in these places, and their family members, I assume, are coming to visit them on a pretty regular basis. And I don't see a lot of opportunity to really enjoy this location. So maybe I'm missing it. I don't know if somebody wants to address that.
Yeah, this is Mark. With all due respect, Commissioner Camp, I just disagree with some of the assertions that you're making. It is true that it's not a bluff top site, with all due respect. It's the bluff is on Marblehead Coastal on the other side. In terms of, it does have ocean views. It is also freeway close, and so that's an issue. But the site does take advantage of the view opportunities. There is a second-story deck, common area that's on one of the corners, and we can look at that at some other time. The memory care component is very much a controlled environment. And I can say from the prior version, which was a 72-unit memory care facility, they were not concerned about any views at all. And in fact, they had to talk them into doing a plexiglass fence on the ocean side so that at least the people that were working there would get the benefit of the view, if you will. But the goal at that point was just to focus on having a safe and comfortable environment internal, and it was very internal focused. And that memory care facility with the garden and the internal courtyard is still very much that same way. But the assisted living, which is kind of a little bit less that way, does have the common areas, including the second story common area view deck, and then does have the perimeter garden areas. But it's on balance, I think the design is very appropriate both for the use and for the site, and does take advantage of the opportunities on the site in a way that's appropriate to the use, at the same time that it's respecting the opportunity to provide a continual view corridor for the neighboring townhomes, and to stay low profile from the street at Frontera. I mean, some of the things that you're suggesting would be, for example, perhaps to be higher at Frontera and terrace down, which would then have the potential to start to impinge on the views from the homes up above. And while those are private homes with private views that aren't formally protected, the 25-foot height limit, I think, was an admonition to try to keep a low profile where you could. So we happy, and Peter, as you see fit, you can pull, reference different sheets, and maybe Stephanie can put them up to share. But the site does take advantage of the of its location, but also that's balanced against the other desires for the specific use that is being proposed. This is not a residential site. This is a residential care facility for the elderly, which is a type of quasi-institutional site, and so it balances those competing interests.
So just also to kind of talk a little bit about some of Mr. Camp's comments too, just to compare and contrast a little bit. The previous project was 72 units, all of memory care, which is a little bit more intense actually than the 88 units of the mixed care that we're going to be providing. Our project will be completely state licensed with an RCFE license, but we'll only be doing 24 memory care units. So, and the rest of it will be assisted living. So, the folks, like you said, will, have, family members and friends coming and visiting. And, that's something we actually pride ourselves in, is we do a lot to outreach to the community. We're going to work with the church next to us. The president of our operating company lives in San Clemente. The vice president lives in Dana Point. So they're close by, and, really value being part of the San Clemente community. And, it's an important focus on the way we operate our business and, and how we do things. In addition to what Mark said about the rooftop terrace facing, the water, we will have a commercial kitchen. We provide food 3 times a day for these folks. And we do invite, friends and family members to come by, use that stuff with their loved ones. So the gardens and the terraces, they are internal facing, but there's need for security. There's, this, like Mark said, the memory care portion, we do have, basically control those folks with different dementias. And, those folks, we can't just, they'll wander off. It's sort of part of that, that cohort of people. So we do need to kind of keep them contained. The assisted living folks can kind of come and go as they please, but they tend to stay at home, and they don't, they, eat dinner and go to bed at an earlier hour than, I would. So they're there a lot of the time, and at night, when the sun goes down, they go to bed sort of. So their friends and family will be coming mostly during the day. And a lot of the units that are facing toward the coast, that's where there's a 2-story part of the building. So almost all of those units are all assisted living, and those folks all will be able to, look out toward the coastline from their units. So we try to orient it that way, and then provide them with second floor amenity space. Even though it won't be really active, it'll be very useful, and they will be able to have family members and friends come over and take advantage of the views from that direction. And hopefully have some nice ocean views from that corner of our building. We're just trying to address a lot of different competing interests with, we wanted the front of the building to be lower off of Calle Frontera, so it didn't look too imposing, and also so that you could look across our site and see outward. We wanted to be respectful of the condominiums next to us, and we also had some real constraints. We talked earlier about the storm drain, and there is a certain fall that it has to occur with that storm drain to tie into the other facilities down below us. And so I think it's like a 1-to-1 ratio we have to maintain. So we had to allow a big enough parking lot in the back so those storm drains could connect properly. So there's, like I said, a lot of competing interests to kind of, even though the site does look pretty spread out and there's a lot of degrees of freedom, it's actually very engineered already. And our civil spent a lot of time and effort making sure that all of that stuff lined up and actually worked.
Okay.
One other thing I'd like to add to that, this is Peter Bertraglia with BTBS Architects. The intent of the footprint of the building was to create a courtyard building so that both the residents and people visiting would have that experience of, going and viewing the courtyards that in this view here you can see from above, that front courtyard opens up to the neighboring site to the north, and it also gives those residents looking down on the project a nicer view of a courtyard building rather than just a solid roof and a walled-in courtyard. So that was the intent of the front courtyard. The second courtyard in the back where the pool is the more active area and contains a little more private for the pool use, which is primarily going to be for therapy, not how you and I would use it, or in a residential project, it'd be more active with more community activities going on. But for these types of residences who are averaging age 80 and up, it's more of a quiet therapy pool. So that's why we chose to make that one the enclosed courtyard, to give them a little more privacy. And the units within that courtyard have balconies which can share in that experience and get natural light in there. And then around the perimeter of the building, we're taking advantage of all the views with larger windows and private balconies off of, I'm going to say 90% of the units around the perimeter have private balconies, which the residents and their families can enjoy. So if their families are coming to visit, they can sit out on their private balcony and enjoy the ocean views and the surrounding San Clemente views that are offered on this site. And then the community room was specifically located on that, it's the southwest corner, which views out over the freeway and past the shopping center across the freeway, and you get some nice ocean views. So that was our prime view location, and we chose to put the community room and outdoor terrace specifically on that corner to take advantage of those ocean views for the entire, for all the residents and their visitors.
Yeah, the pool courtyard is, just so you know, mostly will be used almost like a water feature. People, no one's really going to be, sitting out in the sun. It's really more people who want to go out there and actually just be outside and just look at water and maybe, eat a meal outdoors or sit out there and talk to friends. And then its primary use would be really, because it's kind of located directly across from our fitness room, is going to be sort of like water aerobics or fitness classes that are just a small group of people, in the morning or the middle of the day. So it's really more of a wellness pool. It's there for exercise and just sort of for viewing and sitting outdoors and having something nice to look at. So that's its real primary focus.
Okay, thanks for that elaboration. Is the landscape architect here?
Yep, that's Dan with NJS.
Can you just describe your concept for the overall landscape of the project. And well, you can just kind of go through it, but also emphasize how you're dealing with the edge on the freeway side, because that's pretty visible as you're coming down the freeway. But if you can just give me a kind of an overall description of your concept for your landscape design.
Yeah, were you thinking of just plant material or amenities and those
Well,
types of things?
how you view this project in terms of a community. I see this as large enough project that you're creating a sense of community here. So if you can just kind of walk us through, I should say, how you're dealing not just with the central courtyard space, but really the perception from the street, all the edges of the property, and also with the freeway side.
Yeah, okay. So if, Stephanie, are you controlling the screen?
Yes, I am. Just let me know what sheets you want me to pull up.
Okay, yeah, so let's start with that, and then we have the enlargements of those courtyards as well. So like we mentioned, the building is lower on the front, so the front isn't as daunting to kind of mitigate and add some landscape material to it. The palette that we're working with, if you could go, Stephanie, to L4, gives kind of a look and the feel of the plant material that we're choosing for the project. We do have a preliminary tree plan on the next sheet that kind of gets into specifics on it. But, we're really looking at something it's California, it's beach. The plant material will be a mix of low and medium use water, or medium water use plant material. We want those courtyards to feel a little more lush than probably the perimeter is going to feel. But if you kind of break down each one of the sides of the building, really on the northerly side, the entry part of it, we're doing trees, and then we're stepping down into that entry foyer type space. Some accent trees on the corner, I think, are important to kind of anchor the space and give an entry. We do have some borrowed landscape on the corner at the entries of the Fair Harbor community. So that existing tree will stay in that corner, which will be nice on the streetscape there. Unfortunately, on the park side, on the freeway side, we have that slope that was mentioned, which is about 10 feet. And then we have an easement there. So larger trees on that corner to kind of mitigate the freeway or that edge is not possible, but we are pushing them closer to the building that you can see against the plan west of the parking lot. And then one other note on the, I think plan north is the easiest to talk about. East side of the building closest to Fair Harbor, we are adding a pet relief station type amenity. So there's, they can walk around kind of the south and the east side of the project. And then Stephanie, will you go into the L2, the next sheet? Yeah. So these ones give an enlargement of those courtyards. So the first one on the left-hand side is a memory care and assisted living courtyard. The memory care will need to be fully enclosed. We see a lot of use in kind of meandering paths. We want it to be a therapeutic type space. So we have kind of that S-shape walk that goes through, so they can loop through the project. A lot of times they like to wander and walk, so having that amenity is very important. We have a small fountain to give some white noise to that area, and then what we really try to do on that one is give like a 50% landscape to hardscape ratio. So you can see it's pretty lush around the edges, and then we kind of have this statement tree in the corner that gives some separation between that and the assisted living. Outside the bistro and dining area that you're seeing there, we have just a kind of a view garden coming from outside those windows. And then outside the craft studio, we have an overhead there with some seating. It's really could be a flexible space. So if they do have an event, they can bring out more tables if necessary. A small little barbecue that they can do, burgers or something on a night. And then we've also included a raised garden bed with trellis that you'll see kind of between the walkway on the north and the wood looking deck to the south. And that will be used by both memory care and assisted living residents. We find that having their hands in soil is a very therapeutic activity for them. And then on the right-hand side is the pool courtyard that we talked about. Mostly will be used for water aerobic kind of therapy. And we do have a little bit of turf on the left-hand side there that could be possibly used for stretching, yoga type activities. And it was important to get the ramp into the pool for ease of access into the pool. And then, as kind of mentioned before, we do have some health code requirements that we need to facilitate some buffering around the edges, but kind of getting that landscape perimeter to that to give a little bit of separation between the people inside the pool and those patios that you're seeing on the north, east, and south sides. If you wouldn't mind going up to the next slide. These are the two terraces that we talked about. So the east terrace is facing east, kind of towards the Fairhaven or Harbor Project, sorry. And then the one on the right-hand side is on the east, southwest corner that will really take in the views, as Peter mentioned before. So there's a small trellis that comes outside of there, and then a fire pit and lounge seating outside of that club space. And then the next one, if you don't mind, Stephanie. Like we talked about, some of the materials is on this image board on kind of the look and the feel that we're going to complement the architecture. One of the things to mention too on the, especially in the memory care and assisted living, is Pollinator Garden. We'll be facilitating that with both plant material and birdhouses, bird bass type elements. And we'll also be locating some of those pollinators throughout the site to bring in, butterflies and natural wildlife into the project. I think that's about it. We do have a preliminary shrub list on L6 too, that shows the low and medium plant species that we're thinking. But I think the palette's in line with the Southern California coastal type palette and what you'll see in the adjacents, with a little modern twist on it.
Okay, thanks for that.
No problem.
You mentioned on the freeway where that slope occurs, that's an easement, so there's no landscaping proposed there, or what is?
There's landscaping, just not trees. And Peter or Bill, if you could remind me of that easement, what that was. I know it was an easement, like just.
It's a utility
Mark.
So
Go ahead.
it's not, it's a utility easement existing along that slope there. So we are limited on what we can improve upon it as far as, landscape and kind of retaining walls or garden walls are we're not allowed to have anything with a footing, and then only low ground cover is allowed, and low shrubs, no major trees or anything, so it doesn't disrupt the utilities that are within that.
Okay, so I mean, you're not showing any landscaping, but you are proposing to landscape that slope.
Yeah, no trees, just shrubs.
Okay.
And just to clarify that it's both there's a fairly large sewer line that's actually just at the edge or off the edge of the slope. It's obviously buried. And then the storm drain would be just inland of the top of slope. So there are two major public utility easements next to one another in that rear location. It does create a constraint.
Okay. Well, I feel like I've been talking enough here. So thanks for all of your responses.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Commissioner Camp. I've got two comments or questions. One is with this particular roof plan, and being that we're 2 stories, and Mr. McGuire, you can jump in on this too. We've created a huge amount of mechanical bay space that was not seen by the previous or for the neighbors during the previous public outreach. And I'm thinking there's going to be a resistance to accepting all those wells that you've got up there. Do you have any alternate solution to that, or is this what it is?
Yeah, I'm going to let Peter comment on how he proposes to address the utility wells. I'll have to go back and see how it worked with the artist project.
There were very few. I think there were 2 major wells, and that was it. It was a very simple roof plan because they could go up and back down. They weren't forced to go up and stop. And then in this case, it says once it gets up to 25 feet, we stop and we start a well. Is there a solution to that? I'm concerned.
I think it's a really good comment. I think it's a really good comment, and we do need to be sensitive to screening. The tricky thing, it's easy enough to hide it. I don't think it'll be visible from the townhomes, but from the homes above, that'll be a tougher nut to crack. But Peter, do you have any input you want to give on that question?
Yes, if Stephanie can pull up A2.2, the roof plan. I was very conscious of that difference between our project and the previous one, and so I tried to maximize the roof line and articulate it throughout the building here so that we could minimize the sight lines, at grade and the lower adjacent properties. And then what you can see is that I located the mechanical equipment right up against the back of the parapet wall, if you will, or well wall, so that it's the units are not in the middle of that well, but tucked up against the side to minimize the views from the above properties. And so that they'll just be looking at a flat roof, and those areas in the middle that are dotted are for future solar if the client would ever want to put solar panels in there, and those would be still lower than the 25 feet, but tried to keep the roof as clean as possible and tuck all of the mechanical equipment right up against the mansard wall that creates the well. So that was the intent, and then doing dormers and varying roof pitches and lines there to just make it a little more interesting and take your eye away from the well, and it draws you more towards the roof line and the variation on that. And so that was the intent behind the design of this roof versus you know, putting a full roof across there.
Okay, yeah, I'm concerned mainly on sheets A 4.4 and A 4.5. Without seeing any equipment, any solar panels in those. That's great for. There we go. You can see the number of wells, and I'm wondering if, you know, maybe a solution is to, instead of having it a well, go ahead with a gravel or whatnot flat roof without dropping it down the 3 to 4 feet, whatever that wall is, except at the mechanical equipment. It just seems very cut up, but I'm just concerned that when you get to public comments, you may get comments on that. The next one is the wall at Ola Verde. We've got 320 some odd feet of two-story building, relatively close to the street. And the general design guidelines say we want to be sensitive to the scale and character of adjoining properties. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the correct one, Stephanie.
Mhm.
And you can see that we've put a big box up against a residential street because that is a residential access street. And I want to know how you can justify that with those general guidelines.
If you look at the specific aerial view here, you can see the townhomes on the adjacent property are relatively the same proportion as the 2 blocks that we've created with that second floor courtyard in between. And that was the reason why we put that break in that elevation with that outdoor common area terrace and fire pit that Dan had spoke of earlier there on the east side. And so that break created that volume of separated our building into 2 volumes that are similar in size to the townhomes that are adjacent. There's like 4 or 5 townhomes connected together. So that's where we feel that pattern or massing of the existing buildings relates to our massing on that east side with that break in the building. That was the concept there. And then the ins and outs of the balconies and terraces along there further accentuate and break up the massing to relate more to what's going on the adjacent property as well. So I feel that we do respond to that, and it does create that massing similarity between the new and the existing on the adjacent, you know, neighboring property.
I would just give you a heads up that the previous project, their courtyards were against that residential street. It was basically kind of a U-shaped building. The open areas were adjacent street, and the condominium projects typically perpendicular in most cases to the residential street or pulled way back.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm anticipating that the public will comment on that. And since I noticed it, I'm going to assume that they notice it also. Okay, do we have any other questions from commissioners for the project team or staff, or shall we go to public comment and discussion?
Hey, Commissioner Crandall, could I make one comment just also on?
Yes, Mark.
I'm sensitive to that same issue that you are, and I am interested to engage with the town-owned community and talk about that, you know, the interface between the adjacent uses, acknowledging that this is an institutional. It's not it's not the same zoning, but the other thing that I was going to say is that if you look at some of the uses as you come in on Calle Ola Verde, they have those standalone garages for the first portion, and then they kind of orient down. Again, you can kind of see how we've tried to protect that view cone for the first block the nearest block of townhomes, if you will. And then you may remember from the last project, even that one townhome that's nearest the freeway that's closest to the site, it again has a garage, so a non-habitable space in the front, and then really just one on the second floor, just one bathroom window on that side. So there's a little bit of a benefit just in terms of how they've configured to kind of minimize that. And then the last thing is that we have this 15-foot landscape easement that is on our property, but has always been committed to that side for the streetscape there. And there's a 6-foot wall that exists there. If you, Commissioner Camp may have seen that in his site visit. If the neighbors are interested in additional tree planting and screening, that may be another opportunity to soften that streetscape as you go down.
Certainly.
Those are some thoughts, but we'll definitely be engaged with them and getting input from them.
Very good. And I just want the project team to realize, I mean, it was, and confirm with me, Mark, on this one. I think we even got into when the emergency generator was tested or whatever, so it wouldn't bother the adjacent neighbors. So they were very sensitive to things. Although just because they're sensitive, that doesn't mean it meets the city goals or requirements. So
got it. Yes.
Very good. Let's go ahead and close the presentation of the meeting and open it up. Stephanie, do we have any public comment to read into the record?
No, staff has not received any public comments.
Okay, I will close the public comment portion and open it for discussion between commissioners and members of the Design Review Board. I see no comments right up on the get-go. I think all of the comments were valid. I appreciate the fact that the project team is going to do the public outreach and all. My general feel is that this is a standalone project. It isn't based on the previous application and approval. So we need to be very sensitive. I'm very happy with the one-story element on the on Frontera as you are going. I'm going to call it south on Frontera that you see the building from. So that view is looking pretty good. I agree with Commissioner Camp that had this been a hotel project or a something not quite so inwardly focused, it would have been a fun exercise to take advantage of the views and all. But I understand the project's team's philosophy of inward focused for the community areas and whatnot. I understand that. I would, at this point, I'm not ready to say it's ready for Planning Commission review until we get that city comment. It's not mandatory, but I think it's, I think to get the project through smoothly, it probably is a real good idea, since the neighbors and adjacent properties were so involved in the previous approval. I think we almost need to get comments from them, and understanding that if the project team has good explanations of why they did things that may get public comment, that's certainly something we would consider and take into consideration on giving a recommendation to move on. I see Commissioner McCann, you have your mic open.
Yeah, and Chair Crandall, did you say You don't think it's ready to go back to planning commission until what? Until they have this, like a neighbor outreach effort? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because I think it's, I would hate to have us get into, or they get to make the decision whether to go up or not. I would feel much better if they had that and we had an opportunity to go over it with them before it went to the commission, just to avoid any conflicts or any discussions that were not necessary. So we didn't kind of go off on too many tangents.
So you're suggesting neighborhood outreach, then back to our design review subcommittee, and then on to planning commission?
Correct.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation, that they take that path. Yes.
Right. And part of the reason coming back to design review is if they have items that they're going to incorporate into their design, we would have another whack at them. Is that?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a whack. We're here to work
For
with
lack
them.
of a better word.
Oh, I understand. But yes, that's kind of the philosophy on that. I'm not trying to delay the project, but they've offered that they're going to do the public comment and review and outreach. And like Mr. McGuire said, they will take into consideration those comments. So it sounds like it's already kind of built into their plan and schedule. So I would agree that having it come back, as he indicated they could, is a good idea.
Okay. I'm about to whack them with kindness and compliments, just so you know.
Oh, no, yeah, we haven't closed discussion yet. So absolutely, go right ahead.
Yeah. I think, based on hearing, all of what went into the design, the multiple iterations, and everything, and hearing their explanations for why they located the building where they did, how they did, the orientation, the elevations. I think it's a very thoughtful design. It's a clear upgrade architecturally to the prior project, which I understand it's a, we're considering it de novo new, for this project only, but the prior approval is clearly a reference point that I think should be taken into consideration, because that got through the process. And to me, this looks like a clear upgrade. I think relative to views and breezes, I think those were excellent points by Commissioner Camp. But then when I saw the community room and terrace out in that location is just fantastic and perfect, and gives everybody, all the residents, a chance to go there and enjoy the views, get up above the parked cars, even it's on the second floor, and look out and enjoy the ocean. On the landscape architecture, they did have a cluster of trees at that corner, kind of blocking the terrace and community room. So I would encourage not to have trees there blocking the ocean views. And then maybe there could be like some sitting areas or some benches or something down just at the grade level in the parking, even if it's just for staff to go out there and on their break enjoy the view and the breezes. But I think it's a great idea to do the public outreach that Mark McGuire is suggesting. My opinion is that it seems that they're pretty close. I'm not sure that we need to ask them to come back to design review. That's certainly their call. Unless there was, I guess it depends on what they get out of the public outreach. If they get a lot of really significant comments and they want to either address them or make revisions, then maybe it makes sense to come back to design review. But if it's relatively minor, my opinion is we could advance it, or they could advance it right to planning commission, but that's their call. So those are my thoughts and comments.
Very good. Good comments. Commissioner Camp.
Yeah, I appreciate the responses from the team. Thanks for everybody being here. I think you've addressed quite a bit. We can agree to disagree. I think the project appears very dense. And I understand it's institutional, but this, I agree with Commissioner Crandall. The wall on Ola Verde is pretty imposing. I think that though I like the landscape concept, to me it seems it's sparse. The areas that have been devoted to landscape, though they help, I think, in terms of appeal from Frontera, I think that there's just not enough of it. There's not enough of a sort of a community feel in the project. I know that's a pretty vague piece of direction, but we're not going to design. I think you guys have done a good job addressing a lot of the issues. I would just like to see more breaks, both horizontally and vertically. I think that the project appears very flat. It's 2 stories, I know, and there's some ins and outs that are occurring with upper balconies and whatnot, but the roof line is pretty flat all the way across, even though there's 20 feet of grade change from the street out to the freeway. I think the freeway view is important because you've got, literally, hundreds of thousands of people driving past that property. I know it's not going to look like the other project where there's solar panels that are literally all over the hillside, but I think that needs to be addressed in a more sensitive way. But generally speaking, I think you guys have done a good job here. Looking forward to seeing, what the community, what their response is.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Camp. Yeah, I want to say the whole reason I wanted to bring, not that I want to bring it back, but for true transparency, this is a public meeting, and those that were involved in the previous approvals have not been notified of today's meeting. And normally we don't do that, but on the previous one they were. And I think it would be only appropriate and a prudent business decision to have those public comments, have them presented to us, and then we move it on. And Mark, you can make a comment on that. Okay, so your mic off.
Yeah. First, thanks all 3 of the design review subcommittee members. Thank you for your comments. And I know that we will take them all to heart and look at what we can do everywhere that there's an opportunity to be responsive. We will try to be responsive. On the specific question of the community outreach and then back to the design review subcommittee, to be honest, I don't remember exactly how the sequence worked on the last application, Chair Crandall, because we came back for a couple of other reasons as well. And so we may have had the design reviews, we may have had the community outreach at the same time that the design review subcommittee meetings were being held. But if we did, that was almost accidental, not deliberate on our part. But nevertheless, the point that you're making about we're going to reach out to them, and if we do either make material changes in response to the concerns that we hear, or if there's a lot of concerns that are heard that you would like to get the benefit of before you have your last look at it as a design review subcommittee, I respect that, and so we would try to come back in front of you. On the other hand, if everything goes smoothly and there's not a lot of changes to the project that we would be coming back in front of you on, we may make the call to just go straight to the Planning Commission and report to you that it's more or less the same project and the community was receptive to the things that we did. So I guess, and we do have one thing that's going on, is that Stephanie's decided to ditch us for much of September. I don't know what tropical island she's going to be on or what have you, but so we are going to be reaching out during the month of September to the adjacent communities. It may also go into October. And so maybe we can work with Stephanie to at least hold a spot for a design review subcommittee meeting when she gets back, and then we can just make a judgment call, having heard the reasons why you would want to see it again, and we'll make a judgment call whether to come back at that point or whether to go straight to planning commission. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
It does. My concern is if the public outreach comes up with a bunch of comments, and the public can get pretty heated, that you choose not to do. That means that's going to end up being discussed on the dais at the planning commission hearing with no review or comment from us to either soften it or explain it, or give a recommendation regardless of it. So that's something I would think you'd need to keep in mind.
Yes, and again, if I wasn't clear, what I think I was saying was that if we get a lot of comments and concerns, even if we don't respond to them because we think because of the nature of the use and the nature of the site that we can't respond to the concern, or we don't feel the concern is well taken, which I would hope that we don't feel that way. But even if we don't make changes, but there have been a fair amount of substantive comments, then we would come back to you for you to have the opportunity to have heard those comments and relayed that information, even if we're not making changes. And then similarly, if we make changes in response to the comments, then that would be another reason to come back to you, both to hear the concerns and to see the changes. It would only be if we get, again, I'm going to knock on wood as I say it, just a ringing endorsement, if you will, and no expression of concern, that we might make the decision to just report back to you that the meetings went well and the project is, identical or substantially similar to what you've reviewed today. It would only be under that category that we might not come back. So does that, but again, we're kind of speculating. Let's see how it goes, and then we'll.
Okay, and Stephanie, I think we did have comment about along Ola Verde about if we can get some additional landscaping or something. It's an awfully massive wall. That is something that I do think needs to be addressed. And also I'd like some kind of answer on the expansive roof wells that are up there. And I think those need to be also addressed. So are you comfortable in reviewing solutions to that, or do you believe those are big enough that they should come back to design review?
Staff would feel comfortable reviewing that with the applicant. The applicant has really assembled a great team, representing their different disciplines. So I think that we can really put our heads together to take a look at those particular issues that were raised today and see what we can do to improve the design to address those concerns. But certainly, I think that once Mark and the entire applicant team begin to kick off the community outreach meetings, and based on the type of input that we receive, we can certainly take a look at and evaluate everything based on the degree of those comments and see how exactly that's going to affect the project design, and then we'll be able to determine then whether or not those design changes, if any, come out of the outreach meetings, if that warrants being brought back to design review subcommittee.
Okay, I'm not quite sure how the minutes should reflect this. Either Commissioner McCann or Camp, do either of you have a input on how we can express our findings here?
I do have a thought on that, but before I do, I would like to just say that I, for one, would like to be notified as to when the public outreach meetings are, so that if I chose to, I could attend and hear firsthand, as the public's expressing it at the meetings. I think that's probably good practice for us to be notified at a minimum. Maybe all the planning commission. I know there's Brown Act issues, and I'm sure not all of us would go, but at least knowing when it is, we have a chance to go. Relative to recommendations, I would just say that, you know, we would invite the applicant to, you know, self-determine if they think it'd be beneficial to come back to design review subcommittee or not, based on the reaction they get at the public hearings and or the involvement of changes that they propose to make based on what we've already seen.
Okay, Commissioner Camp?
Yeah, I tend to agree that I think we need to take another look at this project. I think that the massing along Ola Verde is a significant enough issue that I'd like to see how they're going to address it. I think that we need to take a look at that, what's going to be done on the freeway. There's really nothing shown in terms of how that landscape is going to be done. I'd like to see that as well. Certainly it's their call, but that would be my recommendation.
Okay, and it is fine for us to, we don't actually vote on this. We give our individual comments on it. Sometimes we vote on it, but I would agree with Commissioner Camp that I would like to see it come back with the understanding that we all agree that it's a quality team and a quality project, but we feel there's some minor adjustments that need to be made, and we would like it to come back, but it is the applicant's call if they choose to move it on to Planning Commission. Mark, did you have a comment? And then we have one, I want to also make sure that the comments of Commissioner McCann are also in the minutes, that of how he felt about the comfort level of having it move along and so forth. So, Mr. McGuire, one more time.
I would just thank you again, and hearing what you said, I anticipate, and again, our team will get together. I anticipate we'll be back
Sure.
because based on what you guys were saying, you know, we at least an opportunity, a check-in to talk further about the specific things that you guys have raised, even if no neighbors raise any concerns.
Certainly.
But so I, you know, again, we understand how design review works. It's discretionary, but at the same time, we very much value the input of the design review subcommittee. So we'll get with Stephanie to hopefully at least and schedule one in anticipation of being back one more time. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you to the project team. It's always a pleasure to work with you, Mark. Any other final comments by either Commissioner Camp or McCann? Okay. Look forward to working. We are here to work with you, so we're going to do what we can to keep this project moving forward.
Thank you very much.
The next item is new business. Stephanie, are there any other projects that are on your desk that are going to be moved back because of your holiday?
No, you know, I am working very closely with my applicants right now to make sure that projects do move along and that they're just not sitting on my desk and getting stale while I'm out of the office. You know, so expect to see me again in October.
We do.
Yeah. Yeah. So things are really busy on my end. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, very good. The next item is old business, and we have none. Oral and written communications. Stephanie, did we receive any written communications?
No, we have
that aren't on the agenda today.
no, staff has not received any public comments on non-agendized items.
Very good. Okay, do we have a motion for adjournment to the September 15th, 2021 meeting at 4 p.m. via teleconference?
I move adjournment.
Okay, do we have a second? I'll make a second on that.
Me too.
So it's a motion by McCann, second by Crandall. A voice vote, Commissioner McCann,
Aye.
Commissioner Camp,
Aye.
and Commissioner Crandall is also an aye. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your time and good